Have you ever stood in a store aisle and just wondered about the invisible hands pulling the strings on the price tags of literally everything around you? Sometimes it feels like those sky-high prices you pay or suddenly finding empty shelves where your favorite product used to be are just totally random events. But today we're unlocking the underlying mechanics of the whole market. We're going to explore the continuous push and pull of supply and demand and examine exactly how these foundational economic forces dictate the true cost of our daily lives.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Consider the massive discrepancy in how different entertainment industries price their products. Like, why is it that a major AAA video game launch has a rigidly specific standard price tag of $70 basically everywhere you look? You can log in on release day and absolutely guarantee that price. But then, think about tickets to see a massive stadium tour for your favorite band. 1 minute they're at face value, and the next, dynamic pricing algorithms and resale markets have caused them to surge into the thousands of dollars. It feels completely chaotic. Or, hey, step away from entertainment and walk into a grocery store. Why are fresh strawberries wonderfully cheap in the middle of July, practically given away by the carton, but they cost a small fortune if you want them in the dead of winter? It's not some retailer conspiracy, I promise. It all comes down to the underlying mechanics of the market, which are driven by incredibly predictable human behaviors.
So, our roadmap for today's explainer covers first, the mystery of prices, 2, the law of demand, 3, the law of supply, 4, reaching market equilibrium, and finally, number 5, shortages and surpluses.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the mystery of prices, unlocking the market.
And moving right along to Section 2, the law of demand, the buyer's perspective.
Let's start by looking strictly at the psychology and behavior of the buyer. The formal definition of the law of demand states that as the price of a good or service falls, the quantity demanded rises. So the crucial point here is that this isn't just some abstract textbook rule. It is deeply rooted in our psychology and how we perceive value. As consumers, every dollar we save on one item is a dollar we can deploy somewhere else to improve our lives. We naturally want to buy more of something when it's cheaper because, well, it maximizes our overall purchasing power. It really represents the internal calculus we all do constantly. How much of our limited wealth are we willing and able to part with at different price points to get what we want?
Just picture your absolute favorite premium chocolate bar. It's a luxury you enjoy, but maybe you limit yourself because of the cost. Let's say at a standard price of $2, 10 of these bars are bought by consumers in a given hour at a local shop. But if that price suddenly drops in half to just $1, the internal calculus of the buyer changes entirely. The quantity bought jumps to 20. Ask yourself, if your favorite treat was suddenly 50% off, wouldn't you grab an extra one for later? For sure. Or maybe someone who usually skips the chocolate aisle entirely sees that huge discount and decides to treat themselves. That lower barrier to entry immediately invites broader participation and higher consumption. That, right there, is the fundamental rule of demand proving itself in action.
But there's always a breaking point, right? On the flip side, high prices aggressively push buyers away. If the cost of that exact same chocolate bar skyrockets and hits $5, consumer loyalty evaporates rapidly. Buyers will simply decide to walk away and buy less. Or even more profoundly, they'll pivot to what economists call substitutes. A substitute is essentially a different good that satisfies the same basic desire. Suddenly, a much cheaper gourmet cookie or a totally different brand of candy isn't just an alternative, it looks like a brilliant financial decision. The moment the perceived value of a good is eclipsed by its price tag, the buyer's demand completely shifts to the next best option.
Let's move to Section 3, the law of supply, the seller's perspective.
Now, let's see how this builds as we completely flip the script. We need to look at the exact opposite motivations, the desires of the producer, the farmer, or the manufacturer. The law of supply is defined like this. As the price of a good or service rises, the quantity supplied rises. Think about the mindset of a factory owner or commercial farmer for a second. They're taking on the heavy risk of agricultural overhead, paying workers, running expensive machinery. Higher market prices mean higher potential profit margins, and those higher margins offset their immense risk and actually provide the capital needed to hire more workers, secure better equipment, and expand their operations. The prospect of higher prices is absolutely the basic engine that drives production forward.
And this brilliantly illustrates the point. Consider commercial strawberry production. If the going market price sits at a modest $2 a pound, a farmer might be motivated to yield 100 pounds. It covers their basic costs and provides a living. But if that market price suddenly jumps to $4 a pound,
That farmer is highly incentivized to scale up immediately. At that premium rate, it makes total financial sense to pay field workers overtime. It makes sense to invest in more expensive fertilizers or even lease adjacent land to maximize their harvest. They will put in the aggressive extra time and resources to yield double, 200 pounds. The higher price completely justifies the increased cost of heavy production.
But we have to address the harsh, dramatic reality for sellers when the dynamic goes the other way. What if the product is just too cheap? If a bumper crop causes market prices to crash and drop far too low, a farmer might look at their operating costs and make a pretty brutal calculation. If paying the pickers, the truck drivers, and the packaging plants costs more per pound than what the strawberries will actually sell for, well, harvesting those berries simply isn't worth their time and effort at all. It's a devastating reality of agricultural economics that sometimes it's literally cheaper for a farmer to just plow perfectly good crops back into the earth than to harvest them at a loss. If there's no money to be made, the supply simply dries up entirely.
Which brings us to Section 4, Reaching Market Equilibrium, where forces meet.
Here we arrive at the climax of our explainer, what economists call equilibrium. It is the market price where the exact amount buyers want to buy perfectly matches the amount sellers want to sell. You can think of this not as some permanent, static number, but rather as a fleeting moment of maximum market efficiency. It's like a constant, invisible tug-of-war between the frugality of the buyer and the profit-seeking of the seller, momentarily finding perfect peace. When a market hits this state of balance, it is the absolute ideal price point for a transaction. The shelves are perfectly cleared out with zero waste, the buyers fulfilled their desires without feeling cheated, and the sellers covered their costs and made their expected profit. Everyone walks away happy.
Now, what's really interesting about this precise balance is just how delicate it is. In our previous chocolate bar scenario, exactly $2 represents that magic number. At exactly $2, we hit equilibrium. The sellers are willing to supply exactly 10 chocolate bars at that price, and the buyers are demanding exactly 10 chocolate bars. It is a flawless match of supply and demand, no excess inventory sits spoiling in a stockroom, and no customer walks away empty-handed and frustrated.
Moving to our final section, Section 5, Shortages and Surpluses, Market Imbalance.
But as we all know from living in the real world, markets are rarely in a state of perfect harmony. Let's discuss the real-world manifestations of what happens when these invisible pressures misalign. First up, a surplus. A surplus happens when a price is artificially high. If our chocolate bar is priced at $5, buyers actively reject it. The physical manifestation of this? It's that depressing clearance rack at the very back of a department store. That surplus inventory takes up valuable warehouse space, forcing sellers to slash their prices just to stop the bleeding and clear it out. Conversely, a shortage occurs when prices are too low, say 50 cents for that premium chocolate. The physical reality of a shortage is clicking frantically on a grayed out out-of-stock button online, while scalpers and bots buy up the remaining inventory. This immense demand and severe lack of supply will organically force the market to correct itself, driving prices right back up toward equilibrium.
We've focused heavily on chocolate bars and strawberries today to understand the mechanics, but it's vital to recognize that this invisible tug-of-war actively dictates the world around you. Think about the cultural frenzy over limited-run sneaker drops, where artificially restricted supply meets massive global demand, creating overnight resale empires. Think about the absolute chaos surrounding popular holiday toys, or the rush for the newest gaming console on release day, where manufacturers purposefully undersupply the market to build hype and prestige. Or, simply observe the seasonal shifts in the produce aisle, where global weather patterns dictate the cost of your morning smoothie. Supply and demand are constantly pushing and pulling, reacting to human emotion, weather, and logistics to assign a constantly shifting value to almost everything you purchase. I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder. Think about the deeply ingrained retail cycle we all participate in. Why exactly do you think retailers universally slash prices the very morning after a major holiday? What overnight shift in consumer desire forces that immediate correction? I really encourage you to keep a close eye out for these supply and demand mechanics in your own life, because once you truly understand this delicate balance, it will completely change the way you look at a price tag. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning and keep learning.